So some of you will probably recognize Jackee from being a faculty member of our courses. And for those who haven't met Jackee before, Jackee's a leadership coach. I know you're a supervisor as well, Jackee, as well as a facilitator. A real pioneer around reflective writing, journaling, reflective practice. Um, and you're also the co-founder of the School of Journaling as well, and has written many books. Actually, as an author as well. So, Jackee, just before we talk about the topic, anything else you'd like to say to the group as a way of arriving?
Yeah, I'm really delighted to talk about this topic because it's something for me that has really led to me having quite a a flourishing practice as a coach and a coach supervisor, but also thinking about the School of Journaling and the kind of work that I've been able to contribute to different chapters around reflective practice has all come out of actually, the living of doing the reflection on my work as a coach, on my work as a supervisor. So I can see how it's really added real value to my work and the work that I get to do with my clients, the work that I get to do with coaches and coach supervisors. And I really want today to be something that offers you a bit of stimulus around your own practice. So really looking forward to diving into the webinar.
Hmm. Thanks, Jackee. And so the topic is demystifying reflective practice. And well, this was a topic that came out as a request from our alumni, um, where as coaches they were sort of asking questions around what could they practically do after a coaching session, what form could they use, uh, what structure could they use, also what's the best way to approach their own reflective practice. So a number of questions, Jackee, and of course I thought of you because of your expertise and experience with this field. So just for the group, I've asked Jackee to take us through a couple of exercises during this session because we've got up until 1:30.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. So, welcome everyone. Delighted, as I said previously, to be here. I'm very aware of the time, so I'm going to kind of move us along quite swiftly so that we can jump into a couple of practical exercises. As Damien said, the topic is around demystifying reflective practice. And for me, the easiest way that you can demystify reflective practice is in the actual doing of it. It's reflection in action. And I just want to put up front that I think that in terms of a superpower for us as coaches and coach supervisors, reflective practice is going to be our superpower in the growing era of artificial intelligence, AI. In terms of AI teaches us really, really well how to be consumers. And one of the things that we really want to harness and nurture is our ability to do that thinking on our thinking, that ability to reflect and to join up all of the different threads, but also to do that in a way that we don't fall into what we call the cognitive atrophy, around not reducing the quality and of our brain cells by not using them. And that's the thing about reflective practice is that it gives us that ability to enhance our mental functioning, that ability to think across different domains, different frameworks, different things that are happening in the system for the client, in what's happening in our own minds, in our own thinking, what's happening in the moment in the room. And AI takes us away from that by telling us what to do. And when we think about some of the qualities, we think about some of the research that has been done around what makes coaches really effective. We know that the quality of our presence is the thing that really enhances the effectiveness and the impact of a coach and a coach supervisor. And I don't know any other tool that puts us in touch with that more than that ability to be a reflective practitioner. Now, we won't have time today for me to kind of just go into all of the different research. There is such a strong body of research around the benefits of reflective practice. But let me just highlight a couple for you. You might want to write a couple of these down. Reflective practice, it promotes mental clarity and our problem solving skills. And obviously, that's something for us as coaches that we want to be able to do, but we also want to model this for our clients as well. So, one of the things that I do in my practice is I get coachees to reflect in the moment in the coaching session by writing things down. It gives us a safe space to release excess emotions. I've had a couple of coaching clients recently who have come to the session and huge things are happening in their systems. Huge things are happening in terms of the overwhelm and the overload that they're feeling around their organizations just kind of sending them more work and them feeling like they're just completely weighted under this. And actually, the very thing that they don't have time to do is to do that reflective practice. So we know that the body of research really enhances that skill of being reflective. And just a couple of very quick quotes to take away with you, or maybe just to think about. Julie Hayes refers to reflective practice as being related to the same concept as supervision, but one that we're doing it without the involvement of a supervisor or colleague. So it's something that we can do by ourselves. But also, I want to build into this session is that what we're going to be doing here is building what we call reflective capacity. And reflective capacity is that ability to both understand, interpret, and make meaning out of your behaviors. And I often think about reflective practice as and the ability to think about your client, think about yourself before the session, but also create time and space to think about your client and yourself after the session. But also, so you're thinking about the client in the room, before they're in the room, and afterwards. But it's also the process of tuning into your own thoughts, your feelings, and your motivations behind why you do what you do and in the way that you do it. So I could go on in terms of sharing some quotes about it, but I would love us to get into a practice. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to think about a client that either, and this could be a number of clients actually, I want you to think about a client that you feel that you're working well with, a client where the work is going well, and to also think about, or you might think about a client where it's there's a little bit of a struggle, it's harder to think about the progress that you're making with this client. And what I want us to do is we're going to do three short, focused, reflective writing practices as a way of showing that reflection can be creative. It's a dynamic experience. And what will often happen is what you think you know, you will be surprised at what also gets revealed to you through the writing practice. Okay, so I would invite you to turn to a blank page in your notebook. You might have just some paper that you're going to be using for this. I often write on little index cards, or sometimes depending on where I am, sometimes I'm writing on the go because I finished a session and maybe I'm going off to do something else, and I might write on the back of something that I've got close to me. So don't get too caught up about what you're writing on. Sometimes we do the reflection right in the moment. And it's important that we can be flexible and reflexive about that. But our very first practice is what I call snapshots. And the idea is I'm going to give you a couple of minutes and you can think across a number of different coaching sessions. So some of you might think about one coachee that you've recently worked with, or you can think across maybe a couple of coaching sessions or three coaching sessions that you did last week or you've done in the last month or so. I'm going to give you 2 minutes and I want you to either bullet point or list anything that comes to you off of the back of these prompts. Yeah, so you're going to just collate a series. They don't have to be connected. It's just what you remember, what you're reminded of, what comes to mind. And you're going to use these prompts as a little bit of a stimulus into the very short timed exercise. So I'm going to give you the prompts, and maybe Damien might capture some of these. These are the pace that you feel the session went at, the energy that you feel reflects what you experienced or what the client said they experienced or what the client demonstrated to you around the energy of the session. So it might be that the client came in feeling really low and then they left feeling really high, or they came in on a really high energy, or they were speaking at a fast pace, or you found that you were speaking at a fast pace. And maybe there were colors that you associated with the session. Maybe it was felt like a very blue session for the reasons that you will identify in the writing, or it might have felt like a really green session or a red session. What are the qualities? What are the energy? What are the reasons that you would give if you were describing the session as a color? Or maybe it was through your felt sense, or maybe you were connected to your temperature. I notice sometimes I feel really hot or I feel really cold in a session. Right now I'm feeling really warm. I haven't got my heating on in my office, but I feel warm inside and around me. What did it feel like for you in the room? What did it feel like for the client? Do you imagine? What were some of the highlights? Maybe what were some of the words that you remember from the session? Was there a moment that stuck out? What stayed with you? I'm going to give you 2 minutes to collate your list. Write as fast as you can, because often our inner critic goes much slower. So if we can capture that in writing, that would be great. Then, Damien, thank you for dropping that into the chat. So 2 minutes, and I'm going to do one on my last session as well. So, in your own time, I'm just going to ask you to finish off your last two words or sentences, whatever has come to you. And it's always nice to take a couple of deep breaths after you've just had a moment. And obviously, this is a short practice, but it really is a signal that we don't need to have a lot of time necessarily to generate our reflections. I've got a list of almost 20 words down my page, and already I can see that some of those words are quite surprising to me. And some of them are I'm quite curious about, why did I write that? I didn't realize that I thought that. So just before we go to our next practice, just take a minute or so to just capture down a couple of notes or thoughts that just kind of very quickly arise as you think about and you notice your list. You don't have to go into it in any depth, just a couple of sentences. I'll just give you a minute or so to capture that, and we'll come back to those in a moment. As you're finishing this off, I often call this part of the reflective process my little notes to self. You know, this is a way that you can start to really um, build on the reflection in action through the exploration and starting to notice the patterns that are emerging and what's emerging from the writing. Because I often think of our reflective practice as being like an iceberg. There's what's happened in the session that we're consciously aware of. But by doing the reflection, you're actually going a bit more into your subconscious, your unconscious mind, and you're bringing to the surface what else might be present that the conscious mind might not have tapped into or attuned into. Yeah, so this is a really important part because this is where you're shaping your knowledge, your voice, your awareness. This is where you're really harnessing your awareness. And we keep coming back to these notes to self. So hopefully you've taken a couple of deep breaths and we'll move into our second practice. Some of you will be familiar, and if not, please do look it up, or I will share with Damien the tool called the Journal Ladder by Kay Adams. It's a very useful tool for just thinking about a range of different approaches and practices, tools, and techniques when it comes to what we call expressive writing, which is another form that we can really use in our reflective practice, where when we're making sense and meaning, we're often going more into the field and the territory of expressive writing. And so this comes from the work of Kay Adams. And one of the second tool that we're going to use is what she calls the captured moment. Now, this is where you get to be a bit more granular and specific around reflecting back on a moment from one of your coaching or your coach supervision sessions. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to think about a current session, and you're going to think about a moment in that session, and you're going to think about it through the lenses of the senses. You're going to think about what the light was like in the room. Where did the shifts happen? Where were the highlights? Where did you feel stuck? What was it like? How did you feel in your body? What was your felt sense? Now, some of these prompts are similar to what you um, connected with in the snapshots, but this time you are going to go a bit deeper. You're going to write in as much detail about this moment. It could be a 5 minute clip from your session. It could be as long as half an hour. It's entirely up to you. But I want you to capture it in a lot more detail. And you're going to bring to life the words, the comments, the phrases. What were the things that really, really stayed with you? So in this one, you've got a chance to just go wider. It's almost as if you're opening up the curtain. You want to see what's behind there. I love this example from the work of Julie Bolton. She says it's like we've gone into a movie theater and we're opening up the red curtain and we're seeing what else is behind there. So for this one, I want you to really focus on the sounds, the sights, the smells, the feelings, the tonality, the light, the shade, the shapes, and really get creative about it. And this time I'm going to give you 3 minutes for this practice, which is a captured moment from 1998 from Kate Adams. And feel free, if you go off of focus, it's absolutely fine. Just write what comes. Okay, so 3 minutes. And again, I'm going to join you in the practice as well. So it is literally 3 minutes, and I know that we could definitely have gone on for longer. I've certainly wanted to continue. This has felt really rich already, just a few lines that I have on the page, and it's certainly sparking my curiosity and my interest to continue a bit further. But I'm just going to pause us there. So just invite you to write yourself to the end of your sentence. And I want to give you a second methodology with which you can bring to your reflective writing practice that again really builds on that, you know, your reflective capacity as coaches, which I know you all already have, but I really feel like as we continue forward, this is going to be such a key skill. And there's a really good book I would recommend, Your Brain on Ink by Kay Adams and Deborah Ross. And they introduce the a reflective practice technique called the reflect right. I never know whether the reflection right or the reflect right, but we'll just say it's the reflect right here. And this is where you take a moment to pause, stand back from everything that you've written. I'm going to invite you, we've only got a few minutes left. I'm going to invite you to read over everything that you've written so far in the session. And I want you to make note based on some of these prompts. You don't need to use all of them, but just use any of these prompts as a way in. And everything that we use here is as a way in. Um, as you read over what you've written, I want you to jot down in your notes to self or as part of the reflect, right? What are the messages that are coming out to you? What are the themes that are emerging? What has surprised you? How did it feel to engage in this piece of reflection? What did you notice? What did you observe? What were you surprised by? What are you becoming aware of? So you can use things like, as I read this, I'm aware of, I notice that, I'm surprised by, I'm curious why this surprises me, hadn't realized that. So you're just harvesting and gathering some of the insights and the wisdom that might be emerging from the page. And overall, I want you to think about what are the patterns, the connections, or the golden threads that are emerging out of the writing. And trust that the answers are there and that you have your own answers. This is not necessarily about, you know, me telling you this is what needs to come out of your writing. You will be able to really track that and see that for yourself just as you get into the practice. So, a couple of minutes on your reflect right and just gather as much as you can on the page before we start our wrap up. And as you start to write yourself to your last few words or sentences, it'd be really helpful as we start to wrap up our time together. If you could just drop a few words into the chat, 2 or 3 words that really captures anything that's come out of the snapshot, the reflect right, the notes to self. It would just be good because we won't have time to go into it, just to see what's there. I know I was really surprised. I had so much to share. Um, that came out of my reflect right that really surprised me. And just to quickly share a couple of things that I can see come into the chat. Colors, thank you, Mark. Colors are very apparent. Pfizer, thank you. Surprisingly insightful reflections emerge. Elena, strong emotions of courage and bravery came to the fore. So it's really good to notice what we weren't perhaps intentionally or consciously aware of. Joanna, the impact of silence. Tina, focus, noticed, bubbling, oranges and yellows. Isn't that interesting? The color thing seems to be coming through quite a lot. Maya, or Maya, sorry, mildness and kindness. That's something I definitely picked up from my client that I wrote about today was the intimacy in the connection and what she wasn't saying that was definitely felt and came through the session. Trust and connection, clarity, dynamic. Again, the warm colors replacing the cold, such rich reflections. And I think this is at the heart of what we're really wanting to try to connect. And thank you everybody for all of the words and the reflections that you have dropped into the chat, because I think it really does capture the essence of why the reflective practice is so important. And so I'd like to leave you with a little piece of own work, which I'll just flash onto the screen and to just plant some seeds into. Actually, I won't flash it onto the screen because that will take so long. It might take a bit too long for me to do that. But I'll leave you with a, these prompts that comes out of a further practice that you could engage on or with, which is a letter writing reflective practice. And now I don't have time today to go into the practice of letter writing when it comes to reflective practice, but it is a tool that I use a lot with leaders. And I want you to think about, you might want to look up a particular piece, reflective framework by Valley, which is called the Typology of Reflection Framework. And also, if you go onto my website, you will find the Read framework or onto the School of Journaling Instagram account. And both of them are quite similar. But the idea is that these prompts you think about in your reflective practice, you think about your technical reflection. This is from the work of Valley, 1992. And you think about the coaching tools and techniques that you used in the session. And then you move on to the reflection in action, which is thinking about how you worked as a coach. And then you do a bit of deliberate reflection on yourself as the coach, and you think about what led you to do what you did, why you did it, and what were the kind of informed decisions that you made in the session, and what do you need to think about outside of the session. And then you have your personal reflections on, you're thinking about your empathy, your relationship, where you've grown in the coaching, what it was like to work with a coachee. But we're also thinking about our critical reflections. We're asking ourselves questions around what were some of the social justice dimensions of the coaching. And I really wanted to kind of just seed that into your reflections as you leave here today, because this is something that I write about in the Read framework, which is the reflect, explore, be aware, and decide on the actions you're going to take. Because we also need to think about the social, political, and ethical issues that come out of our coaching. And if we had more time today, we would dive into that. But I'd just like to leave you with that. And thank you for this, your reflections. My final questions were, what was most helpful to you today? What was your takeaway from today? What surprised you? And what tool or practice will you put into practice from around your reflection practice in the next 24 hours? Because I think there's something about doing it really quickly, really smartly, that will really just encourage us to pull the learning from here back into your own practice.
Great, Jackie. Thank you. It really did demystify reflective practice. I'm sure, with those number of exercises, but also the invitation for them to take that sort of balcony view. And I really
Yeah.
like the notes to self, and
Yes.
I'm definitely going to take away in terms of, that idea of boxing it in as well, in terms of on my journal. Uh,
Great.
and for the coaches listening, you've got some tools now that you can really step back and think about your ongoing development. You can think about themes you're taking to supervision, as well as really noticing your strengths and really validating your practice as well. Jackee, just thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Damien. And I must say, I did get a lot out of that for myself.
Mm. Yeah, no, me too. Me too. And for the people listening, Jackee has recorded some previous webinars which are on our YouTube channel where Jackee shares a bit more around the research around reflective practice and journaling. So remember there to go there. And I've also earlier just put Jackee's website up on the chat as well, just so you can follow up and look at the resources on Jackee's website. So Jackee,
Great.
anything else you'd like to say just to bring today to a close?
Yeah, there's a question in the chat about the Read framework. I will definitely share some of the slides, and the Read framework is on there. But the for those who've asked, the acronyms stand for Reflect, Explore, Awareness, and Decide. Great. Hazel, thank you. Almost there. Perfect. Yeah, great.
Thanks, Jackee.
Yeah, thank you so much.